Thanks for joining, everybody. We are going to get started in just a few moments here. We're going to wait for a few more people to join. Bill, I just saw that question come through. We're going to see if we can enable recording. We will have a recording of this sent out to everybody after the fact, though. So if we can't get recording going, you will be sent a recording of this afterwards.
Yeah, it's recording now.
Oh, excellent. We'll give it just. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and just kick this off now. Hopefully, we'll have a few more people joining soon. I just want to start by thanking everybody for joining our Spec-Rite agency webinar. In this webinar, we will be focusing on how Spec-Rite Online can help you maximize your budget and your productivity. We're also offering all attendees today a free month of our retro reflectivity and API add-ons. So after the fact, please let us know if you want to start those trials. We'll be sending out some communication to you as well. If you haven't met me, my name is Ben Zemmel, and I am the product manager of Spec-Rite. We also have our backend engineer, Mitchell Zaretsky, here, and I'm sure that most of you know Perry Cooper, our customer success specialist. So in just a moment, I'll be passing this over to Perry to present, but I wanted to remind everyone here that this is an interactive experience. So if you have a question or a comment, go ahead and please type it into the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat as Perry walks us through everything, and we'll be sure to address all of the questions during or after each section of the presentation. So with that, I will pass this over to Perry.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And yeah, like Ben laid out for the agenda for us, we're going to cover three specific topics on the reflectivity side, and then we'll dive into the SRO API. On the reflectivity side, the three main areas of focus today are going to be budget precision, efficiency, acceleration, and really talking about who stands to benefit. So, from a budgeting standpoint, covering how you can really generate report and map visuals to help you spotlight planning priorities and make sure you're getting the most out of your budget each year. Talking about efficiency, we'll be looking at the combination of application and reflectivity data to make sure that your crews are putting in the inputs that are ultimately going to get you that desired output you're trying to achieve. And then the knock-on effect that will have on the traveling public, making sure that they get the best traveling experience they could possibly have. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into SRO to take a look at these specific areas. So um, as far as reflectivity jobs go, we have a very simple process to get those into the portal just by uploading the reflectivity files you get from your reflectometer. And we do accommodate a multitude of reflectometers, whether you're using a Delta, a RetroTech, a Road Vista, and we can easily accommodate others outside of that, whether you have a different one or if you're just building one in your garage. We'll do everything we can to make sure we can get those files inside of SRO. But we'll start with the map visuals. So if we go into Sky View, we can actually start to see the data on the map. And the first thing that we're going to do is really just look at the reflectivity data from a high level standpoint. That way, when we come in here, we can actually get a overarching view on what areas are ultimately going to need our priority as we move into our next striping cycle. So as we turn these on, we can go into our filters here, and I can start to look at everything we've collected from our reflectometer in our sample data that we've got. So once we get our dots appearing here on the map, we'll see a bunch of different colors. That's going to be our red, yellow, and green. And this will just indicate the performance of that reflectivity reading. So the data that was collected from your reflectometer, we can now actually see across our sample data exactly how well we performed and get the first high level insight of understanding where we might need to prioritize our planning as we move forward. Now, it's not just looking at the map data here from the highest level possible. With the segmentation you can do inside of your reflectivity data, we can actually look at specific regions. We can look at routes, jobs, whatever your view preference is. We can accommodate that. So in this case, we're going to look at a particular road. We're going to look at our highway here. And if we hit apply, this will shrink everything down just to that road. That way, if we've identified this as a priority, we can go back and see exactly how much of this particular segment we're going to have to hit in the future. So right now we're actually looking at all the different reflectivity readings collected on our highway here, and we can see the reflectivity readings and the color associated with it, the line type as well, just by looking with our cursor over each individual point. And it'll tell us our score here. And as we move through the entire job, we've got a lot of different colors. So we can see yellow, red, and green here. But as we move into the more granular side of looking into the reflectivity data, one of the things we'll want to do is really combine that with our application data. So as we look here, what we'll want to do now is enable our application data. And once we've got that enabled, we can actually see the overlay of the points and the application lines here on the map. So if we zoom in a little bit here, we can actually see our individual paint lines and our reflectivity readings associated with them. Now, one thing you want to make sure you're doing in order to actually get the insights you're looking for is to make sure the data sets are matching. So in this case, what we'll really want to do here is look at the, let's say, white edge line on 127, and then make sure that our application data reflects the same thing here. So we have our highway demo job, we have our white solid edge line, so we know that everything we're looking at is of the same type of data. Now, as we can see, we have a few different colors. We have some fair, we have some poor mixed in here. And we can actually toggle on and off which data we want to see. So when it comes to the application side, we're just looking at potential areas of failure. And then when we look at our reflectivity data, we can filter out the fair and the good to really match those up and make sure that we're really starting to understand why each one of these reflectivity readings is the score that it is. And in order to do that, what we can do here is just grab a specific segment. We can say this segment here, we can see that it has one reflectivity reading score of 84 on this white edge line and a score of 80. Up here at the top, we've got a score of 86. So really, when it comes to accelerating that crew performance like we talked about, making sure the inputs are giving us the desired outputs we're looking for, this is where we start to actually discover why that is. And we can actually go into our performance tab here, and based on this thresholds you have set up and customized in your portal, it'll actually tell us. So one thing we know just through the common recipe of reflectivity, we can look at our beads. We can look at our material thickness. So if we're shooting for a target of 15 like we are in this case, it's a little bit low, 13. So some beads might bubble up and stay at the top. And we can look at our bead rates here. We know that we're targeting 7 pounds per gallon. That's the perfect application rate to ultimately hit the reflectivity readings we're looking for. However, in this particular case, we only hit a 3.5 on our element side and a 5.7 from our standard bead side. So this is just one way to unlock some of those insights that you can actually visually look at and then go back to the crews and say, okay, here's areas we have of improvement to make sure that ultimately we're one striping this line when we need to, and when we do stripe this particular section, we're actually striping it in an efficient manner. So making sure we get the most out of our material, whether that's 1 year or 2 years. Now, when it comes to more planning and more operational efficiency insights, we can actually get into the reporting side of retroreflectivity. So when it comes to reports, We'll look at our reflectivity reports that we have here. And one of the things we can do to really start and understand what areas need to be hit, where our priorities lie, we have this road report special template that is easily utilized to tell you exactly which roads are going to be your priorities based off a percentage of miles and a percentage of the performance of your reflectivity. So if we pull up our example here, we can actually see if I'm looking at the entire region, I could see here that, all right, we had 76, 59, and 88% of lines in this region that fell into the poor category. So on a per route basis, we can see here we've got 90, 21, 26, 261, so on and so forth. Here's in the green bars how much of each one of those particular roads met our reflectivity standards, how much actually failed our reflectivity standards, and then we can actually chop that up and look at it from a line type perspective as well. So what was center line versus edge line? How well did we fare? And we can see here, for the majority of the time, our edge line was what let us down. And then if you're looking at this, we can actually see each individual highway that we have in our region where we ended up not meeting that reflectivity score. So from here, we actually now know these roads are going to be our priority minus 395. So we can see here that we pretty much knocked it out of the park on 395. The reflectivity readings are strong. Maybe we can push that area and it'll get the full life of the paint and the beads that we planned it to have. From here, in order to figure out what that might cost you and what that could mean to your budget, is we can go back into SRO and run our cost report. So we can actually give you an idea of what it might cost from a material standpoint to actually redo these particular routes. And you can do that for each individual route, or if you want to look at it from the entire region and look at those routes to get one big sum of what it might cost you in paint to restripe. We could do that by a particular project, like we talked about with the region, or we could do that by each individual road. But here we have a few inputs we'll want to make sure that we use. So our line width, our target line width, we're using a pretty standard 4-inch line with a target of 15 mils. We use a standard skip cycle here. So on a 40-inch cycle, we'll use 10-foot skip, 30-foot gap. We'll be as optimistic as we can. We're getting cheap paint. We'll say that costs us about $40 per gallon. And since it's water-based, we know we're going to use our gallons here. Now, once I've got my time range set up correctly, it's going to get this to load. And we can go in there and enter the name of our report. That way, when it spits it out, we know exactly which one to download and look at. And in this case, we're going to stick for the same route that we looked at inside of Skyview. So we can see cost report, restripe. And once we have all of our inputs, we can now run that report, hit save, and that'll generate in the background. Now, for example purposes, we can look at that exact report already since it's been pre-created. And running that cost report will give you down there at the bottom a very good estimate for not only the lane miles that ended up being not up to standard or ended up failing. We can see exactly what our total average was for all of our pour lines here. So we had a total of 105, just under our 150 threshold. But over on the far right-hand side here is where we really start to discover, just from material, this is how much we could be looking at restriping that 77% of the route that we selected, 127 in our example. So it's really just about making sure that you're combining insights that we give you inside of the SRO portal, your application data, understanding the flow of reports to make sure that one, you're identifying your priorities, and two, making sure when it comes to those priorities, you have a very good estimate of what it might cost you. Ben, I will turn it back to you. Do we have any questions?
No questions so far, but I did want to open it up. If you have any questions about retroreflectivity, about what you just saw, the whole process, we would love to hear them. We'll give it just a moment to get some questions here. All right. Well, unless we get another question in quickly, I think you did too good of a job on your demo there, Perry. We do not have any questions so far. So let's go ahead and move on to the next section.
Perfect. And yeah, really to put a bow on the reflectivity side, right? When we're ultimately talking about getting more out of our budget, when we're talking about increasing our efficiency from the truck standpoint, who does that serve the biggest benefit to? Ultimately, that's a safer driving experience for the trafficking traveling public. And if you're like me, ultimately at the end of the day, that's who we're doing it for, to provide the best experience we possibly can. But now we can actually move into our API. And when you think of the SRA API, all you need to think about is an automatic pipeline to provide map ready data into whatever existing platform you're using. So we'll actually take a look at what that looks like inside of a GIS system. If you're using CityWorks as well, what that would look like in there. So if we go back into our QGIS, I can pull up. Here we can see we have not only our layers down here in the bottom left, we have our standard map view, but now we have the SRO data that we have used the API to populate inside of your GIS layer here. And what we can do here is once we click on these lines, we can customize and make sure the width and they visually appeal to the way we need them to, is we can click into them and start to see the data here that corresponds to. So that way, not only is the rest of your traffic inventory all in one central location, now your pavement markings inventory is also in that same central location, so that when you're creating different layers, whether that's, stoplights or, signs, you can include that pavement markings, the reflectivity data as well inside of your SR, inside of your central portal. And some of the example of the data points, right, that we've pulled over. I mean, we have our material batches, our bead batches, all of our distances. So all of this data that you're pulling out of the SRO API will make its way into your GIS system. Ben, I'll turn it back to you since we were looking at, after looking at our output here from the SRO API. Does anybody have any questions?
I was muted there. No
Uh,
questions so far. Okay, I do have a question that's coming in. How customizable is the API?
Yeah, so the API, it can be set up to actually give you everything from a full data standpoint, 1 through 300 of the metrics available, but we also do have the ability to customize the API outputs based off the existing reporting templates you have set up inside your SRO portal. So if you wanted to use, say, like your daily production template or your yearly review template, all you have to do is put that into the API and it'll spit out the information the exact way that you want it based off of how you set up that template in your portal.
Excellent. Thank you, Perry. Do we have any other questions about the API? We do have, if anyone is technically minded, we do have an expert here. So any specific API questions are also welcome. All right. Well, while we are waiting for some more questions, I did just want to bring back up that by being a participant in this webinar, you do get a free trial to both our retro reflectivity add-ons and our API add-ons. We will, like I said, we will go ahead and reach out to you right after this with the next steps for how you can set up those trials. But we really want to give everybody an opportunity to use these features themselves and use them with their own data. For the API trial, we recommend that you work with a GIS engineer or just an engineer that you have on your team to get that set up. And we're happy to go ahead and provide documentation and other resources to assist you when you're starting that off. All right. And then the same thing with the retroreflectivity trial. When you do that, we want to know, we want to really get your experience with that. We want to make sure that you're using that with your data. If you have any questions about specific reflectometers, go ahead and let us know. Perry mentioned this before, but we do support all of the major reflectometers. But if you have one that isn't supported, that's something that we can do very easily. We just need a little bit of a sample output for that. With that, we don't actually have any additional questions. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Perry to close us off here.
Yeah, well, from all of us at SRO, we appreciate y'all joining. As Ben said, just to reiterate, if y'all have any questions, please let us know. I mean, we're here to help out, and we will be following up with everybody um, to get those trials kicked off. And then also, if you have any folks that weren't able to join, from your organization, we can always distribute the recording, which we plan to do to those who made it, and also the ones who didn't make it. So, um, yeah, we appreciate y'all attending, and if there's anything we can help y'all with in the meantime, just let us know.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.